Aye.
I saw him yeah, okay.
Okay, then let me call the meeting to order. It's 8:05 on Saturday, January 9th. And first step would be to ask the Assistant Secretary, Jeff, to do the roll call.
Yes, and let me just acknowledge that Directors O'Grady and Dornbrook are not here, so I'll call the roll. Reichert?
Here.
Epstein?
Here?
Smith? Here.
Just testing to see if you remember. Okay, Michael, do you have announcements?
Yeah, welcome to the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District regular board meeting. The district would like to let you know that the meeting is fed live over the internet, and the public can view this meeting by going to KMPUD.com and following the appropriate link. If the public would like to make a comment or ask a question, please email me at msharp@kmpud.com, and the board will respond. We ask that the public, Cheryl, identify yourselves when making comments. So if we hear anything from the public, we kind of figured it might be you.
Okay, thank you, Michael. And speaking of Cheryl, let's see if there's any comments from the audience this time. There aren't any. Okay. So item 6 is the adoption of the consent calendar, which consists of the minutes of December 11th, December 28th, the consent for claims and receivables shut-off report. And let me see whether there's any corrections or changes. Yes,
I have a change. Staff would like to pull consent item B, December 28th minutes. They're not ready yet.
Okay. Any other changes? Okay. Is there any move on to item 6? Is there any discussion on the adoption of the consent calendar?
No, I'd like to move adoption of the consent calendar as amended by the general manager.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So that is done. There's nothing brought forward, so we'll move on to item 8 and discussion. 8A, discussion of possible changes to policy number 140. Michael.
The first item I'd like to handle here would be the committee memberships, if that's all right. Our existing, or in early December, our memberships are as listed above, and we have several changes that I would like to recommend for approval. District staff would like to recommend the following changes and appointments. Nancy Trevette to move to the Finance Committee from the Planning Committee. Casey Bland to move from the Finance Committee to the Planning Committee. And Nate Whaley and Judy Flynn to be appointed to 2-year terms on the Planning Committee. If there's any comments from Finance or Planning chairs.
Yeah, just to note that in Finance, the committee recommended Nancy that change, and Planning also recommended the additions as noted.
Okay, good. Any other board comments? Any comments from the audience? Okay. So that's the structure, and then we have suggested changes.
So maybe a motion to approve the changes on.
So I'd like to
Okay.
move that we approve the committee membership as stated for Finance and Planning.
Second.
Okay. Moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Passes
We
unanimously.
actually have 4 members on the Planning Committee, community members on the Planning, which is
Which is
fabulous.
great. That's great.
As evidence in your packet, staff has made changes to the committee charters and to policy statement 140. These changes correspond to current practices and include expanding the number of community members allowed on each committee from 3 to 5, defining the term community members to 2 years to correspond with that of the board committee's term, replacing the requirement for minutes with action items. And I open this up for discussion. This was presented at Operations, Planning, and Finance.
Yeah, Planning and Finance, I think we all recognize that this is the way things are being done. In any case, we think that they're good changes to the charters, and both committees recommended approval.
Okay. And the only other change was to have someone serve only on one committee concurrently.
Right.
Okay, any further discussion?
No, I'd make a motion that we adopt the changes as presented for each of the committees.
Second that.
Okay, and before we vote, let's see if there's any community comment. Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So far, Bob, you were doing an amazing job running this meeting.
Yeah, thank you so much. And did you notice that revenue is up since the change? We'll come to that later. I want to jump ahead.
Bob, maybe a separate motion for policy statement 140?
Yeah, okay, so we've discussed the policy changes. So motion to,
Motion that we accept these changes for policy 140.
okay?
I
Do we have a
second.
Okay. Any further discussion, community? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that passes. So that completes item 8A. Move on to item B and invite Kelly to come up and discuss November financials. And smiles are appropriate and encouraged.
Good morning.
Morning.
So we'll get started on November balance sheet. Just a few notes. You'll notice that total AR is up from budget, and this is due to $352,000 in accrued property taxes and also $780,000 in consumer AR. And consumer AR is up due to the good November we had. So that's a good thing. Moving down to...
Can I just ask?
Sure.
So on the property tax, I mean, the point is that we accrue it on an even basis every month.
a monthly basis. Mhm.
So in maybe this month or maybe February, that'll catch up with it.
We actually
The actual will
received,
catch up with the
right,
accrual, right.
we received, was around, I want to say $60,000 in December. And we received some more after that too. So, and we should be getting more payments in January. And then again, we get another round, it's usually in March or April, I believe.
Yeah, and then finally May and June or something
Right.
like that.
Moving down, I wanted to point out the total and unamortized debt expenses line. That budget number is going to remain at 146.5 for the year. And this is due to the fact that in the budget, the monthly electric plant acquisition adjustment wasn't added into that amount. So that will be an outstanding issue, and it's just a budget line item that we'll fix in next year's budget to make sure that that is actually shown to increase by that monthly amount. And it is a set amount, so that $35.46 is what the monthly amount is for that adjustment, and that is a static number for almost 40 years. So. And then moving down again to total accrued interest payable, again, that is a budget formula error that will be corrected in next year's budget. It just didn't reflect the quarterly payment that was made, so the budget number is higher than it should be. And that's all I have for the balance sheet, unless there's any questions. Okay. Moving on to the combined income statement. You'll note that, again, revenues for November were up, and this was, again, due to the fact that the resort was in full operation for all of November. We had really cold temps in November. It was a good month, the best November we've had since we've taken on electric and propane. You'll also notice that cost of goods is up for the month of November, and this is mainly due to the propane fuel surcharge. And I'll explain that in a little more detail when we get to the propane fund account or fund page. You'll notice that in November, salaries and wages were down, and all departments except solid waste were under budget for the month of November. You'll notice that payroll taxes and benefits are over budget for the month of November, and this is mainly due to that IRS tax penalty that we had to pay in November. And also, you'll notice that operating expenses are up for the month of November, and this mainly stems from the internal electric and propane use at the CSB and the vehicle maintenance shop. And that stems from the cold temps in November as well. And that's all I have for the combined income statement, and I'll go on unless there's any questions.
So if I'm just looking at what the basic health of our district is, financial health, if I look at the bottom line, we're $586,000 better net than planned. But then if I take out that contribution revenue, which was the Timber
TC
Creek thing, right?
towns.
If I take that out, and then I also take out about 170,000, because we haven't yet paid the PG&E bill, so the depreciation hasn't started, right? So that's 170 plus. I mean, it's on the order of $400,000. It's a little bit artificial, right?
Right.
So
in a way we're 100, maybe $200,000 better.
at $202,373 would be.
Exactly. I was going to say that.
So we've been working with Director Epstein and Treasurer O'Grady on a new chart, which I show here, which actually takes those uncontrollable, I think how Bob says it is, how is the business doing? And taking out those uncontrollable. And this is a draft, and Standish has some comments that he'd like to see incorporated, but this goes directly to your point of pulling out those Timber Creek, depreciation, Gatsby 68, all those issues, and just showing how the business is doing as far as revenues and expenses.
And this also takes out property tax revenue as well. So the EBITDA is before all of those below the line things. It's a truer picture before any interest and things like that.
Yeah, so that really is then a picture of our operations, basically. Because the property tax revenue is a real number that we do depend on.
Right.
So, for example, if we budget $800,000, all of a sudden, for some reason, we get $900,000. That's a good and real thing.
Yes.
Unlike the depreciation that just hasn't started hitting that.
Okay. Moving on, just a few notes on each of the separate funds. G&A, again, the overage in taxes and benefits, mainly due to the IRS tax penalty, and again, the way that we are now having to post the CalPERS unfunded liability expense. And then also contract services were over in November, and this is due to the final payment to Moss Adams. And I'll move on to water. You'll notice that other revenues are up in water, and this is due to the Chair 9 snowmaking meter installation. That invoice went out and was paid. Overall water, they did do better in November, but was still operating at a loss of $5,100. Moving on to wastewater. Again, in November, wastewater did operate at a loss. It was better than budget by $2,000, which is, I guess, something good, even though it was at a loss. Moving on to electric. Electric, again, had a very good month in November, due to, again, the resort being open and the cold temps. And then also moving down to the amortization line, again, this is that electric plant acquisition adjustment that wasn't budgeted for, and we are going to make sure that that's added to the budget for next year.
Yeah, I don't quite understand what that is.
So when we acquired the electric and propane departments, there was an adjustment to it's along the lines of the fixed assets that we acquired, and per Bob Benson, there was an amount that had to be amortized for the adjustment of what the acquired assets were worth. And so that is added as an amortized adjustment to the statement. It kind of, the way I look at it is it's added on the balance sheet, sort of like, what's the word? I'm sorry, fixed asset, like it's amortized like that.
So is it, was Bob Benson's analysis was that we paid more than it was worth or less than it was worth?
I can get you.
I'm just curious, because
Yeah.
I think when we looked at the balance sheet, it was an asset, not a liability, right?
Well, this is like the like depreciation expense.
It's like a depreciation.
Right, exactly. And I can get you a more detailed explanation of that.
No, that's okay. I mean, it's not that big of a number. I was just really curious about it.
Yeah, we'll bring it back.
Mhm.
You know, we'll have a further explanation from Bob Benson. We'll bring this back.
And this is already adjusted for the lifetime of the plant, the slower rate of depreciation.
Right, it's over, so it's
Okay.
38 years, I think, is what this adjustment
All right.
is spread out over.
So if we take 17,000 times 12 times 38, then that's probably the approximate value of the fixed assets we acquired.
Mhm.
Well, I know that we paid $3 million total for that.
But 2 million, 1 million was propane.
1 million
Oh,
propane, 2 million for electric, right?
Right.
So we're writing that off slowly over 38 years, is what all that amounts to.
Right.
But that's not also in the depreciation mark?
This is an adjustment to that
Oh, it's an
depreciation,
adjustment
right?
to the okay, it's an adjustment to the depreciation.
Mhm.
Got it. For some reason, but I'm sure it's a good reason.
And we'll get those details to you.
Oh, okay, it's not that urgent.
Moving on to snow removal, you'll see that we did do better in snow removal for the month of November, and I think this is mainly due to we've got some more new contracts this year for some new the new TC Townhomes in Timber Ridge. And you'll see that for the year, we're still not quite back in the black yet, but now that we're actually posting revenue, that'll get better as we go through the winter.
And we post revenue from November to March.
It's actually budgeted this year to post through April.
Through April.
Mhm.
We'll also see additional revenues from contract service work that we're doing, work that's not included in a contract, but we do it as a project basis. We have work that we've been doing at Whiskey Run, Timber Ridge, and now everything that we do with the snowcat is billed out, because that's not part of our regular services. So when we go and ramp at Edelweiss or ramp between Base Camp and Sun Meadows, that's a billable service. So I foresee that snow removal will actually be ahead of plan in revenues. However, we spent 90 hours in 1 week in overtime during the Christmas holidays removing all the snow. So we'll see that expense as well.
Moving on to propane, mainly I just wanted to, in propane, you'll see that cost of goods sold is at $136 or almost $137,000 for the month. Of that, $63,855 is actual propane fuel. And then $73,000 of that is the actual propane fuel surcharge. It's the credit that we give back to the customers due to the cost of propane and being lower than what we actually have allowed for in the budget. That nets basically with our overage in propane revenues. So they kind of net each other out, and really we're right on budget for propane for the month as far as revenues goes if you take into account that propane fuel surcharge.
So at the Finance Committee, I think it was the Finance Committee at one point requested this format for the surcharge.
Right, we just started that this fiscal year.
And
is
there were
what we-
questions, again, at the Finance Committee about why it wasn't done that way. Maybe it should go back. And to me, I like knowing how much the surcharge has been.
And we can show the surcharge as, we previously were showing it as a separate line item under revenues. It was a negative revenue line item.
Right.
Rather than showing it as an expense item.
Yeah, I mean, I personally am neutral on the question. Standish had some feelings about it.
Yeah, and I met with Standish after the Finance Committee meeting, and when he gets back, we're going to work on.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing we upgraded the chair.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll show it in a few different ways.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good point. So at the next meeting, we're going to show it on slides as we're showing it now as a negative revenue item and then as net revenue posted. Because PCS will allow us to net revenue post, but then you wouldn't see the surcharge.
Yeah, well,
Right.
it's just what I like to see is how much.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, partly it's just so we can say to people, this is how much has come back, because all we do is we just do it on a cost basis.
Mm-hmm. And, propane has been a lot cheaper than what we budgeted for. So.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Solid waste, again, they did operate at a loss this month due to some extra time spent in hours, some extra help cleaning off the snow from all of the dumpsters and things like that. That's all I have for income statements.
Yeah, two important notes on November. Snowmaking helped revenues substantially in November, and having the resort open on, I think it was November 21st, actually, having that Thanksgiving helped quite a bit. And then cold temperatures helped the propane revenue. So overall, the business volume helped create the best November that we've ever seen.
And then the next item we have again is this new slide for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. It's a accounting term that again shows true operating expenses before any of the below the line things. And we will expand on this, I think, maybe put a few more detail lines in there when Standish and Michael meet, and we can find what more granularity you want in that to see what actual revenues are included or expenses are included. This was a first go round at it. But I think it is a truer picture before all the special line items that we have to show. Moving on to December preliminaries. And this was in your supplemental. Thank you. Again, year-to-date revenues are up. We had a good December and November, so bringing our year-to-date revenues up. You'll notice that other revenues for the month of December are much higher than plan, and this is due to the fact that we did transfer $9,500 from the 501c3, the fire department special account, back into our regular fire department account to help pay for the gurney that we purchased from the fire department fundraiser. And then also $38,000 of that is from the sale of our renewable energy credits. And then Brandy and I are working on how to pass those on to the customers, our customers, as savings, and that should happen in next month's billing.
Right. And there'll be a separate line item showing, and we'll put a note in the newsletter as well.
Okay.
And then again, it just
I'm sorry, how will that be apportioned, you know?
that's what we're working on. Yeah.
Yeah, it can't be kilowatt hours for the previous month. That's not actually fair. So we probably look at for the period that it's worked, that it was credited to.
And for expenses in December, really the only thing that's not estimated at this point are salaries and wages and taxes and benefits. And this is over budget due to holiday bonuses not being budgeted for, as well as the snow removal overtime hours in December. But overall, we did have a good month in revenues, so. Any other questions on preliminaries?
We have some other slides as far as you'll need.
Sure.
So one of the things that we're starting to do is track our performance over the year. So this shows August through December against budget. You can see that I think the interesting thing here is that it really shows you how we're doing against budget and against last year, which is I think even more important. You can see the actual for year ending 2015. So December of 2015 was an extremely good month. Yeah, it shows here as well. And
Can you just back up for a second?
Sure.
So what I don't understand is we budgeted 950,000 kilowatt hours.
Mm-hmm.
But we also budgeted for a bad snow year. So, and revenues were higher than planned, yet the kilowatt hours were the same as budget?
Kilowatt hours were the same as budget. So last year, December was a standout month, and we budgeted against the actuals for last year. And you'll see that as we trail on to the month, January was
okay. So that's what
awful month.
All right.
So it'll catch up because, as you remember, January of last year there was no precipitation. We started seeing grass out front.
Right.
We had a hard time to catch up for the rest of the year.
Right.
So you'll see that, and it was all budgeted against actuals from last year. And actually, December has been a very good month for the resort for several years. In fact, this slide actually shows you how good December has been all the way back to 2012.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
One other piece of data that occurs to me, we actually know how many days people use their homes in each month.
Mm-hmm.
Might be an interesting thing to look at also. So we have that data.
Just as an average.
Well, it might be interesting to know, are there any trends of how many days people are here for the residences?
Discuss that at our Tuesday meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to cash waterfall. December actuals, we were at 1.786 million for the month. Budget was 1.1 .713. So we did better by $73,000 for the month of December. I think this directly relates to the good November that we had. And December was forecasted to be our lowest month of the year, or lowest month of the fiscal year for cash. So I think that moving forward, that's a good thing. Reserve fund at 3.37, again, we just hadn't received our invoice from PG&E yet, so that's still showing above budget. And still, the lowest point in our 5-year forecast still shows to be December 18th, or December of 2018. And this still includes the switch station being completed, which hopefully won't have to be.
So this, the updated operating forecast line beyond December, has that been updated to 2.685?
Yeah, it automatically updates when the gray areas are the actuals.
Yeah.
And so when I plug that in, it automatically updates the new forecast based on what the actual was for the
But it doesn't take into account the December billings that are probably more than anticipated.
No,
So the January hopefully will come in over the 2.685 because the revenues.
oh no, the AR number
Yeah, the
has
AR
been
does.
updated as well.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Right there.
So
Okay.
the AR goes as a percentage of collections as
Got it,
months go
okay.
by.
Okay, so-
90% of the previous months we say we're going to collect
Right, I see.
in
Yeah.
January, so that has been updated as well.
So I see it's $400,000
Yes,
better.
Mhm.
that's
Yeah,
exactly
what
the
it was.
reason, like on this chart here, you'll see that our variance to plan is so much higher, and that's because we've had a good start of the winter season.
Good. Thanks.
Any other questions on cash waterfall?
Just to, one other note, we have received the PG&E bill. It came in rather high at first, but it has come back down to a more reasonable number. So we are working with Orby to get that down to what we have posted and what we have posted as a liability. But it came in at $4 million.
Oh, jeez.
And so,
It's just unbelievable.
so we didn't pay it.
No.
And
It's just unbelievable.
And it was a moderate reaction to that bill, so over the top. But I guess they claimed that we didn't show previous payments, so they didn't ask me why.
so we have a meeting with them, but they have given us better backup, which is only $179,000 over what we think we owe them. So we've cut it from 2 million some odd to 179 very rapidly. So
But we got to get rid of that too.
we are on board.
And at least now I've got they sent a spreadsheet along so that I can actually tie out numbers. The original invoice they sent had no way to tie out any numbers to what they previously sent us. So now I can actually get dollar amounts for what they charged us over from what they originally estimated, so.
And I mentioned it to Bob, it's staff's intention to get this squared away with PG&E and then actually bring this as an agenda item at our next meeting. I feel it's a large payment, it's the last payment, so I would like board direction on payment.
Okay, so that completes the cash flow. Should we move on to the budget?
Yeah, that's great. So, staff is working on the 2017 through 21 budget with the first deliverables in February, Valentine's Day, 14, 2016, to the Finance Committee and then to the board. Presentations of assumptions will be on a track changes format. So we'll show our changes to the assumptions. The initial projections will show unit sales for 2017 and a growth factor for the following years. And we would like to take our first pass on rates. And here's our current rates, just as far as, this can't be finalized, but our first pass on what the rates will be in the 5-year period, whether they'll stay on track, decrease, or what we anticipate.
Is February 14th is a Sunday? Is there a
Yeah.
particular reason why you picked that day for?
Because it's Valentine's Day? No, I must have had my
That was me.
February 13th. Yeah.
All right, so you're going to move it up ahead of schedule to the 13th?
Yes, that was
Okay.
my fault. I must have typed the wrong,
No, it's okay.
looked at the wrong date on the calendar.
So it will continue to be a Saturday.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it won't be on Valentine's Day. But,
All right.
It will still have all my love.
Okay.
Some hearts on it or something.
Yeah.
So we'll show the track changes on the assumptions and initial projections for unit sales and a first pass on rates.
When
The
you say
other,
first pass on rates, do you mean, is that just with the inflation added in, or what you think the rate should be, or what do you mean by
kind of a
that?
projection on what I think the rates will be before we get into the nuts and gritties of the actual expenses and where we're going to end up. So we'll have a much better look at rates in the March meeting when we actually are showing the first.
I guess what I'm wondering is, what will you base your rate assumptions on? What they are today plus inflation, plus the CPI inflator, or?
Well, that's a good first step, and also projected sales and how those projected sales.
Oh, it might affect rates.
Well, and at least in the case of electricity, you have debt service reductions. And obviously, if there is some improvement in usage,
Okay. But,
that would change it.
and at the Finance Committee, the only thing we said on this schedule, we thought this was a good outline of schedule. The only thing we wanted to be sure is that before the final budget, that we had more discussion about the EDU base rate conversation for propane and electricity. Gets incorporated into the budget.
The other thing that we'll be presenting is the capital budget after, I should say, 2017 to 21. After a couple of years of deferred plans on capital projects, it'll be nice to see a moderate year of capital improvements, a new format showing the expense item, and then a cycle of, could be a number of years, could be a trigger such as units sold or capacity, which would trigger a specific improvement. So there will be another column that we're working on at this time. A lot of projects that we're looking at, this doesn't mean that they're going to be proposed for 2017, it's just projects that we're concentrating on, are a new storage tank, propane storage tanks, which we'll get into more detail further, the water storage tank, getting back onto our wastewater collection system upgrades, snow removal equipment, buying a piece of snow removal equipment to help with our fleet, the powerhouse radiator cover, which we'll cover in another agenda item, a tugger for electrical line pulling through conduit, a chair tent transformer, which has been an issue on big days, and then we're going to need to spend some money on asphalt repairs just to make sure that we maintain our asphalt throughout our facilities. So those are the major items that we're looking at right now, and we'll present that to operations. Actually, planning and finance will all look at the capital plan.
On the tier 10 transformer, is there a temporary fix on that? That's
Yeah, so what they're having is when they have a full powder day and every chair is loaded with 3 people and they have a stop because someone falls off or whatever it might be, they can't get it back started unless they turn off chair 6, and then they can ramp it up, slowly get it moving, and then get 6 rolling, and they can get back on rolling. It's a sudden draw of a lot of voltage. It's a problem. Staff was able to increase the voltage, and we were planning to do this anyway, so this is not a thing that we did for chair 10. We increased the voltage in the valley by 1% and helped mitigate that problem for right now. We can increase the voltage to chair 10 after the transformer, which wouldn't impact the rest of the valley, another 2% or so, which could also help this year. But we're looking at, and we have a power quality meter on it so that we can tell, is it a voltage issue that's coming out of chair 10? Should it be, should it be upgraded transformer? We'd much rather do that work in the summer, much cleaner operation, though it could happen in the winter. I've done quite a bit of research on that. So we're looking at, it's a 500 kVA right now. We're looking at possibly going up to 750 if need be. And a whole discussion on responsibility needs to take place too. But right now we're just looking at what the fix would be. So unless there's any...
I just have one other question on the capital. In a 5-year time frame, do you anticipate any improvements to the distribution system?
Water distribution?
No, propane or electric distribution. Or do we feel like we understand it all and it's all modern?
No, I think there's definitely areas on the distribution system that we need to improve. One of the areas for $38,000, which is more of an expense item, is the testing of all of our transformers. We did that 5 years ago when we first started with utilities, but I don't consider that expense, a capital item.
Right.
It was a major issue. We're going to continue with our circuit tracing, which could lead to capital. It's kind of like wastewater collection system. You got to go out there and find it, and then you have to propose a fix for the problem. So
Okay.
collection, circuit tracing could definitely be distribution system dollars as well. Brandon,
Okay.
did I miss anything?
Okay, thanks.
And that's my report for the 2017-21 budget.
Okay, so that completes item B. Let me see if the Finance Committee has anything additional.
No, we
Yeah.
brought this to the good.
Okay, good. Let's move on. Thank you, Kelly. We'll move on to 8C, discussion possible action regarding investigation computer rate study for all enterprise services.
Productive meeting held on December 28th on the methodology of calculating base rates for the 4 major departments. Many important questions in some direction. I think the base rate objectives were well stated. I think the questions that came up was determining what an EDU should be for each department. Working with Bob to set up a program to be able to show what the difference will be to a customer for each change. This could be based on a residential average, as it is in water and wastewater, which carries along that theme. Should EDUs be adjusted annually based on usage? I think the direction where it says yes, as long as we could use a decimal system so that we could put it down to the first decimal and get away from that huge gap between 1 and 2 EDUs, and the impact would then be minimal, far more accurate. Should EDUs be based on a decimal point resolution? Should EDUs be calculated on a commercial unit or a residential, or simply be based on usage? There's a differential now in water and wastewater between commercial and residential. And we're going to show the data on both scenarios, so the board can make a choice on that. Determine what fixed expenses should be covered by base rates, kind of following back on what Eric was mentioning, process through the budget process. And then for current, confirm any change in EDU calculations would result in the same revenue as we receive now, rather than, and that's another issue that we'll need to have further discussion with the board on. As far as initial recommendation, I think for the short term, we should deal just with electric and propane. Deal with the major problems that we have at hand. Water and wastewater is a much larger long-term solution. Of course, use the EDU method. Determine a average usage as an EDU basis, adjusted annually with a 1 decimal point resolution. Determine whether it's commercial or residential or just based on usage, and then present a proposal at our next meeting and possibly call a public hearing either in February or March to start going over this with our customers. So with that, I open it up for discussion.
The Finance Committee looked at this as largely a catch-up discussion so that the other committee members knew what had happened in our meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael summarized things well. I think that there's still a question about whether we can communicate reasonably about the decimal point thing and how how many EDUs a home has, how it might change, and whether we communicate that well and whether it's understood versus the clarity, although maybe the slight inequity associated with residential versus commercial. So that'll be a point of discussion, I think.
Okay, one other thing that's come up since the meeting is the fact that if you have solar, the solar customers currently are, because of state law, they're heavily subsidized by the other homeowner, by everyone else. And while the rates are not subject to any discretionary opportunity, there is some consideration whether the base rate is fairly apportioned for solar customers or not. So I think that's the other factor that we should look at. And we doubled the number of solar homes last year from 3 to 6.
The other item that was under discussion is the rate study objectives. I thought this was, to review the principles that we established back in 2013, and I think this was a good discussion as well. Areas that we're looking at is the targeting reserves by department. Include $500,000 in the COP revenue, which is actually in your balance sheet. Maintain the $2 million operating reserve each month that we've established in the past. Possibly go with a 1.5 debt service reserve and use the cushion of credit as that mechanism. And I think the cushion of credit, we did some further research and found that it's already set up. It's very streamlined. If you pay more money into a debt than is due, they'll put it into a cushion of credit for you. So it's not like a laborious task that we have to do. It's extremely well set up. All payments on RUS notes in the excess of the required payments due and not otherwise designated shall be deposited into the borrower's existing respective COC account. An email would be nice, but it's not required. So it is so automatic. I was rather surprised. 5% interest is accrued daily, accredited on a quarterly basis. The balance of the cushion of credit can only be made to use scheduled loan payments, but that's including principal, interest. So it does. A payment from the COC account will automatically be made if you don't make your payment. So if we forget to make a payment, which I know Kelly won't do, but and we had a cushion of credit account, they take it directly out of the cushion of credit account. Once again, an email to RUS would be nice, but not required. And I think the last one is that the principal balance of all loans has to be more than the COC account, which makes intuitive sense,
Right.
Yeah.
So otherwise, it's a savings and loan account.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So we can't put $100 million in there and go, oh boy,
5%.
Here we go.
I think that there was one question, Alan Sapp had a question on that one policy statement or one eligibility statement that you were going to look into. But I think that there were other question was, does there have to be is there a separate cushion of credit account for each and every draw? So we'd have like 20 or 25 or whatever it is, cushion of credit. And they can't be transferred one to the other.
Yeah, and that's further research that staff will do. But good news as far as the availability of that account to the district. So we are also researching the line of credit currently at $250,000, which is secured by the title of this building. We have a meeting on the 13th with Bank of the West to determine if we can raise that line of credit. That would just be a line of credit that would not be used at budgeting purposes. It would just be a set aside that we knew we had that if need be. So I think it was a good discussion, and we will be bringing a proposal for these final amounts to the Finance Committee at their next meeting.
Yeah, the Finance Committee obviously discussed this, had a couple questions just mentioned. We did had a quick review of those numbers, which I wrote down: $2 million operating reserve, $1.5 million in cushion of credit, $500,000 in the COP, and then we have the capital reserve funds as well. So that, if we could get there, that'd be over $4 million.
Mm-hmm.
Be pretty good.
Okay. Any comments, audience? Any further discussion? Okay, so that completes 8C. Michael, since we can't take action on 8B, do you want to defer it till the next meeting?
Yeah, it was my keynote presentation here. I even have the best pictures in the world.
Uh-huh.
But yes, I'd like to.
Okay, would you like further time to express your disappointment? Okay, so D requires four or five votes to approve, so we'll just wait until next meeting instead of reviewing it twice. Okay, item E, discussion possible action regarding ongoing maintenance associated with Out Valley.
So there's several items here. Caltrans claim, the winter inspections and maintenance, the 2016 work plan, environmental support proposal, and the recent fiber line outage. Board authorized staff to file a claim with Caltrans for a cost not to exceed $5,300 for the Out Valley alignment issues caused by Caltrans concerns over the installation of snow poles along our alignment. This was a unanticipated change, which resulted in our moving the line into the shoulder of the road, actually into the asphalt. We were going to be off into the shoulders for a great majority of the line that goes from Silver Lake to Kirkwood. This resulted in a cost of $377,000 to the district. We have filed a claim, and we will update the board when we hear further information from.
Does the claim just cover this issue or cover the several issues?
No, it was board direction to concentrate on the 377. The other two, there's two other issues. Both of them we didn't feel that we had a strong case. The French drain issue was, I think, $54,000. That was the existence of French drains that we didn't know about that we had to actually repair. And the other one was the sludge, creating a dam in the road that caused a...
And why didn't we think, I sort of missed
Well,
that.
Dick Shanahan's suggestion was to go after just the 377 because the other two items he didn't feel we had a strong case. One of the reasons is that before we started work, there was no ice in the road. After we completed our work, they started having a problem near classes of having water, come up. Now, whether it was a problem of because we put in that dam or whether it was a problem with their initial design, Dick felt that the ruling would be that you started the project, there wasn't a problem, you completed the project, there is a problem, it's probably your issue and your liability. The other one was French drains. Caltrans has an exemption from the USA mandate, and so I don't know if we could have gotten a due diligence claim against them, but those other claims were very murky and they were for much smaller amounts.
Interesting. But I thought the slurry thing, the dam, was probably the most likely because we followed their instructions.
But it was only for $38,000, so it was a much lesser Can I move on?
Yes, please.
Moving on, staff has been completing out valley inspections and will continue next week. Please note that these are not our snowmobile tracks that are going between, and note that underneath those two stakes is a sectionalizing cab, which is behind those, beneath those. So obviously this is prompting staff to install more stakes. You can see that it's very well impacted. There's quite a bit of snow out there. It brings the issue of access. Should the district dig up sectionalizing cabinets for easy access or leave buried? Obviously, quick access is a plus, but since some of these cabinets are right along a designated U.S. Forest Service snowmobile trail that they maintain, leaving them buried instead of creating a worse hazard by digging them up right along the trail, you could imagine what would happen if you dug this fully up and there was a snowstorm and we have created a huge open hole right next to a snow track. So at this point, we're going to leave those next to the snowmobile trails buried and restake those with stakes around the front so that we don't have people using them as soccer goals. So we will be continuing to do our inspections. Next week we hope to be on the Out Valley line and go into KM Green, where we're going to be installing a phone. So at KM Green, instead of just being able to call KM Blue, you'll be able to call anyone you want to. So we look forward to that, because when you're down there, it's good to have communication. You can talk to Exponential, we can talk to PG&E, we can make calls rather than having have to go through a third party to get information relayed.
So that brings up one question that I had on the claims. There's like an $800 or $900 charge for AT&T for phone service, and I'm just wondering, since we have our own fiber line, is there a reason why we need an outside service for phones?
Yes, that's a really detailed question.
Okay, this was a yes or no question, so you answered yes.
Yes.
Thank you. We can move on.
Okay. We can go back.
No,
that's great.
Yeah.
So
Precision is appreciated.
These are the trails that we'll be utilizing. Staff plans to actually utilize this U.S. Forest Service trails to get back to KM Green and do these, and then also, as much as possible, go right underneath the 34K line. It's impossible to go underneath much of the 115 because of the gradient. But we do plan also a trip down to Salt Springs because we haven't been down there for a bit. So that probably won't happen next week, but that is something that we're planning on doing. So winter inspections are continuing. With that, I'll move on. 2016 work plan. Staff is taking this on in-house, and it will be back for the board's approval next month. We're taking it in-house because it was originally done by RCI, and we feel that just a modification of the work is going to suffice. We've already met with the Forest Service on it. We have a good understanding of what they're looking for. The plan describes what we plan to do in maintaining the Out Valley line this next year. I've been out on the line. We have a couple of trees that died that should be taken down. There's some limbing that I feel will be needed along the overhead lines. Some ladders that need to be removed as the snow comes up. That'll probably be done this winter, actually. Trail building, actually just creating a better trail going between 30 Bear River Reservoir and KM Green. Grading is needed on all of the district-owned and U.S. Forest Service access roads as needed because of winter erosion, anything that's due to the Out Valley line, not just general. Water bar installation is needed on the roads above the vaults to prevent water intrusion. Replacement of stakes as needed on the sectionalizing cabinets as mentioned earlier. Environmental monitoring and mapping of invasive weeds, and that'll be a discussion I'll have in just a moment. And then a work week with Exponential, where Exponential comes out, our electrical engineer, and kicks the tires, makes sure that our transformers and our different equipment is working up to standard, and then work on the fiber vaults, which I'll mention in a moment. As far as the RCI environmental support proposal, you'll see it in your packet on page 124. RCI assists us in many ways on the work plan. One of the largest is with the environmental. But this is a proposal for $22,000 for the support of 2016. The 2015 proposal was for $20,000, so it's gone up slightly. I have put in their fee of rates into your packet. They have gone up, but they have continued to give us good service. They'll be involved in our annual operations meeting with the Forest Service. We actually go out there with RCI at the beginning, try to figure out what we want to do specifically. The work plan is more of a general document. Specifically, we go out and see what damage we've had from the snow year. I expect that it'll be less than what we had in 2014 going into 15 because we didn't have, so far we haven't had those rainstorms. Snow is much less of an impact than a violent rainstorm like we had last year. But protecting our sectionalizing cabinets and our vaults, water intrusion and the problems we've had with our fiber, regrading the roads as seen here. RCI will be giving us support in these areas, and then looking at the revegetation areas that we had. We had some areas in 2015 that didn't come out as well as we'd liked. We'll be re-looking at those and working with the seeding companies to reseed those if need be. And then the biggest part of this is invasive weeds. They actually have to GPS track the growth or the shrinking of the areas of invasive weeds along the site. Anytime that you dig up or have a construction area, you promote the growth of invasive weeds, and we have a 3-year commitment to keep a track of those for the Forest Service, and I would suppose that the board will direct us to continue that even past that. So this is a less extensive survey than they've done in the past, but because they don't have to do areas that don't have weed growth. So due to this and due to the need for the continued support, staff recommends acceptance of the proposal with an estimated fee of $22,600.
So I have one question on that. So if I go back to slide 77 and look at the electric expenses that are built into the rates, which line item would this fall under? I mean, I see operating costs of $165,000. Is that where this would be?
I think it used to be contract services, but things changed with RUS.
It would be under operating expenses, but it will have it will be broken out under transmission, I believe.
Okay, but my main question is, this is a budgeted. I mean, it's slightly more expensive, but it's part of our annual budget. Okay.
And those categories changed because of RUS requirements as far as tracking.
I love the categories on slide 77 because they're nice and aggregated. Appreciate that. Okay.
The only question I had was, does RCI scope cover only those things where they have expertise and we don't? Or does it also cover some things that is just good, we just need help, even though we would have the expertise? So for example, the access roads, where they anticipate one full day in the field performing an inspection of access roads. I mean, it seems like you do that already.
Yeah,
so
I asked her to...
Sure what they'd be adding.
Right, so I asked her to add that in. She actually designs the water bars and installation, and then meets with the Forest Service and talks about the installation of those water bars. And we get twofers from RCI all the time, so when they're out here doing the access road inspections, they're also doing some environmental looking at, they'll do some invasive weeds, so these trips out to Kirkwood are combined. But yeah, I feel that it's necessary to have RCI support on these.
And we did do some water bar work this summer, right?
Right, on our access roads.
Yes.
Primarily the one right above Silver Lake. But there are other areas that I feel we should need, especially around vaults that's going to be contained in the 2016 work plan.
Okay, any questions, audience questions? Okay, so do we want a resolution to approve the contract?
A motion would be great.
A motion to approve the contract for RCI services?
I'll make a motion that we approve the RCI contract as presented.
Okay,
I'll second that motion.
all right, is there any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. All right, so we move on to item 5, recent outage on the fiber line.
Yeah, so we've had 2 failures in March at Silver Lake Bridge and then again at the Lower Bear River Reservoir. The 2 areas where the fiber line actually comes up out of the ground is not buried. We have done inspections and noted that there's some water in those, which I think is coming out of the top, but have noted that the seals are remaining in place. So there's water in the bottom of the vaults, though it's not coming up very far. As you can see, it's way below the areas of the lines, and that the seals are in place in the conduits. We think that as far as next steps and solutions, that we're going to need to purge the water out of these vaults on an annual basis. So, whether it be in the spring or in the summer, or spring or in the fall, we're going to need to purge water out of all of our lines. This will take an outage for the electrical system, but not for the fiber line. And we just really need to inspect and take a look, making sure that our conduits are sealed, that the caps are located on the spare conduits, that the weep holes, in areas that we need weep holes, they're plugged out or pushed down. In areas that we don't, that they remain in place. And that the splice protection has not fallen off the wall, that it's still up, so that we maintain our splices. And finally, we're working with Volcano, and what's their experience as far as they've had a fiber line going for quite some time. And Steve Stone is very interested in being able to quickly be able to provide redundancy to each other if there is issues in certain areas. So there could be splice locations that's very close by where we could just run an overhead or over the ground line to provide that service until because we've been lucky the last 2 times. Both areas had spare conduits and we could easily pull through. We got it repaired, we're back up and running. But it's something that we need to really focus on because this is this is high speed protection for the district. Let alone what it does for PG&E, it does a lot for us. So I just wanted to bring this up, let the board know that I'm focused on it, and the staff will do everything we can to make sure that we have the parts on hand to repair it. The fiber, lengths further than our longest possible failure, splice kits on hand, and that staff knows how to identify where these are. We'll also be looking at the machinery where we can actually do a locate. And if we can locate it, the problem, we're real quick. It's harder to get an outside service up here to, at Edge. They're very, they respond quickly, but if we can know where it is and have it all dug out and ready to go, we've got our tugger there, and, it's going to make the repair even quicker. So that's what we're doing at this point.
So, Michael, do you think that when you consider all the things that are required to maintain both the power and the communications lines, that we've adequately budgeted for all this work? I mean, I know that we anticipated annual maintenance, obviously. I don't think we knew exactly what that meant, but I guess we're learning. But do you think we've budgeted adequately for that in our?
I think in the early years, yes, because as you know, it's brand new, it was engineered well, it was installed well. As time goes on, things wear out and we'll need to increase those budgets.
But I mean, in terms of the time, like the labor to go purge the vaults and, do all these things that you're talking about, does this somehow fit into our budget that we have, for example, for this year?
Currently, yes. But we'll, I take your comments and, we'll look at that strongly in the budget process. I think we've been extremely lucky with the few problems that we've had, considering the weather and the rainstorms and everything else that we've seen.
Yeah. Good.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to item 8F, update on PG&E.
You have two items here. As you know, the district is concerned with the cost of ownership and also the switch station. I won't go into the details on that. We have received a bill, which is a sign of motion. So we're working with Orby Davis, our project manager, on that. And I've also had communications with Mike Tannenbaum, our project administrator, on our proposal letter. So this is a positive step. I think you'll remember that they were working on a counter proposal. He's committed to a meeting next week so that he and I can go over the proposal, and hopefully my hope is that we can schedule a summit meeting with representatives of the district board and PG&E and go over the proposal in more detail. So we have movement. They kind of shut down for about a month during December, and we're seeing them come back to life. So.
Okay, thanks. So move on to item 8G, discussion of the powerhouse and propane winter operations. Like Brandy, yeah?
So during fall operations in cold periods, the district can go through a truckload of propane in a day. The district has approximately 35,000 gallons of storage and needs to keep the tanks at a minimum of 30% full. So our sweet spot for storage is currently about 15 to 35,000. Only 20,000 gallons, or about 3 days of storage. We could probably run for 4 days, but that causes Brandy some sleepless nights that we don't really want to go into. With road closures, this is not a great reserve, especially considering what the consequences of an outage is. So we have, due to this, district staff has been researching an additional tank, actually placing it to the west of the existing farm as shown on page 25 in your pack, or page whatever in your packet.
130.
Thank you. Also needed would be, to connect this tank to the system. That's where it would be placed, and that's kind of where the area is. We own 25 feet out from our existing tank, so we actually have space there. This is not a quick project, but we have contacted Hangtown and Kiva to see if they know of any tanks, any used tanks, or any suggestions that they might have for putting an additional tank in. The location is really good because our infrastructure is there. And if we wanted to move it to, per se, the powerhouse, we'd have to run a 6-inch line up the hill, put in another vaporizer, and it's much more difficult. Plus, we'd have another hazardous area that we'd have to maintain. So, I think this makes a lot of sense, and we'll be working with our consultants at Kiva and Hangtown to bring more details to the board.
What's the scale of cost, and how many digits?
5.
5 digits? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So.
And are those 5 digits between 5
The last digit's a 0.
Yeah.
So a 30,000 gallon tank, I would think that we could get one for about $1 a gallon, $30,000 plus installation, crane, all that other stuff. So that's just off the top of my head. So if I'm right on, I'll bring that number up again.
Okay.
If I'm off,
We'll forgive, I'll remember it.
forgive So Brandy has been contacting, our vendors to see if they have any above ground storage tanks.
Are our existing tanks in good shape? Is there any reason to believe that those need to be replaced or refurbished in any way?
They need a coat of paint, but other than that, they're in good shape.
So we will continue to research this, and this is part of the capital plan research. Another area that we need to allow for is the actual snow protection around the tanks to get the valves to critical shutoff areas. As you can see, this was very well buried, and this is a critical valve. So Brandy's working on, what sort of temporary or permanent closures that we can make so that we can protect our valving around these tanks.
Michael, do we own all these tanks? Both tanks?
So if we put in a 30,000 gallon tank, then we're planning on 5 days storage then?
Well, that would give us,
That'd be all right.
Because you lose a third of the tank for reasons which we don't have to explain.
Vapor space.
Vapor space.
can I move on?
And the tanks come from South Lake Tahoe? The refills, where do they come from?
I know they usually come from the Jackson area. They come through that that area. If the road is open, they can come the other direction if need be. But it's,
Okay.
And what brought this to a head is during that December 21st through 25th, we were down to 3 days. We had a tank sitting at the first gate and he turned around and went away. And we had to go till the next day, and it was very cold, it was very wintry,
Right.
and I had knowledge of what it was like when Mountain Utilities ran out of propane. Maybe Cheryl can help me with this, but well, you lived through it, and it was just awful. Having to relight, the dangers, the safety dangers of possibly filling up a person's garage with propane. Do you have any comments on that, or?
That pretty much captures it. It was pretty scary.
So
Do
we
we-
never ran out.
Do we have an inventory of who has pilot lights that they're manually lit?
not to my knowledge. We assume that everyone does, because even if you have an automatic lighting, if that fails, we try to get personnel in anytime there's an outage.
Uh-huh. Okay. And do we know obviously we know what percentage of people have those boxes in front of their houses so we have access?
Knox boxes?
Yeah. I mean, is that very many, or?
No, it's very limited.
Okay. So there is an overall safety effort that we could mount.
Yeah, on the Knox boxes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's the propane, I assume, powerhouse.
Yes. So, as anticipated, the backside of the powerhouse has become a major issue due to snow building up while not running the generators. Pictures in the packet give a clear indication as to the severity of the problem. Snow has to be removed from the motor housings, from the belts, from the blades, in order to run the generators, and they have to have an airflow. And in the picture that's right here, you can see that there is no real airflow there whatsoever, which obviously is not the case. And you can see this is the backside of the generators. Temporarily, the radiators have been dug out. This is not what they look like today. On Saturday, today, work will begin on building a wooden closure around the cat generator backside, protecting their motors. This enclosure will sit over the backside of the generators and end at a safe distance from the exhaust.
When you say over the generators,
Over the backside of the generators, so it'll sit.
the generators are in the powerhouse.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, over that. The motor casings for the radiator.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
So it'll actually sit right basically here to protect this line. This is what we're concerned about right here.
Uh-huh.
And we'll stay away from this exhaust where we have a potential source of heat. They'll be closed in on the back, closed in on the top, but accessible so that we can shovel it to the backside of the radiators where we can actually get to it with a trackless. Right now, to dig out this, you have to move it several times to get it to accessible to a piece of machinery. And in snow removal, you use the biggest piece of machinery that you can for the job, and a shovel is the smallest piece of machinery now. So we would shovel it towards this side. It would stay away from the exhaust areas. It would be open on the sides for airflow, but during storm cycles, they would be closed with tarps, and we can remove those during operation. It's a quick and easy way to be able to run our generators in an emergency, have them protected, and still give us, the protection that we need during it.
So this would allow us to run all 3 cats,
3 cats.
and then the Volvos you'd have to manually clear everything out to get the Volvos going.
Yeah, before we started on the Volvos, we'd see how our cat installation went, and if it's bomb-proof, if it's built the way I think it'll be built, then we'd probably move forward on the Volvos as well.
So you see this wood enclosure as a permanent?
No, I see it as a temporary solution that might solve the issue for, the rest of this year, possibly even another year, depending on how it works. But ultimately, we need to come up with a design that actually extends this roof, as we talked about in years past, where we can actually extend it past the radiators, let the snow fall in this area here where we can get to it with the trackless, blow it up on the hill, blow it on the other side. So whether that comes from the roof line, which seems to make a lot of sense, where you don't want to hold it, you just want it to shed and go. Shed and go. Whether it's way up here or down there, we've contacted the structural and mechanical engineers that actually designed the powerhouse. We all saw this coming, so we're looking to get recommendations from them on actually how they would design this. So this is in the infancy stage, but I think it makes a lot of sense to do a permanent item that that just takes care of the problem for the duration. But we are working on a temporary, and we have shoveled them out, and right now we could run the generators.
We could run the generators.
And that's all that I have for that.
I remember you were worried about the durability of the, I think that the flexible lines that come from the powerhouse to the radiators, that is not manifested as a problem?
No, but we're still concerned. There is a flexible line. It's for coolant, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not only up high but down low. You can almost see them, but they run on these lines that you can see coming through, and they're down below too. The ones that are closer to the building are actually covered right now, and the ones that are closer to the radiators are uncovered and free. But they're very flexible. I mean, they don't have any support to them whatsoever. One of the items that we'd like to do along with this is, it was a proposal that we brought to the board and we decided to defer on, was putting expanded metal walkways.
Right.
So that they have a support, a cover over these flexible metal areas, and something that we can walk on. Because right now, to shovel these out, you're literally standing on 2 structures like this, shoveling, and if you put your foot down, then you sink down like 3 feet. So it's a dangerous situation that we need to address. Did I cover that?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Any audience questions? Okay. And any update from operations or capital? Yeah. All right. Can we move on to 8H? Our harmony?
Harmonics, I leave this on the agenda. We do not have a huge update on this. In fact, we have no update. Just to remind the board, we are now in the first quarter where the board has directed staff to work with Vail on a plan for resolving the harmonics at the remaining chairlifts. And I have been meeting with Casey on a regular basis. He knows, and we have given him written notice of this requirement of the board. He does understand the issue, and he has put things into his capital plan to put a filter into Chair 4. So I will meet with him next Friday again and reaffirm our direction.
Okay. Then we'll move on to item 8I, performance reporting.
So we'll start with electric. In electric, we did have a good month for metering kilowatt hours. We produced 1,079,000 kilowatt hours and metered 919,000 of those. We show a system loss of 15%, but that is a bit deceptive. As you remember, last month we reported that in our distribution system we weren't able to get to the backside meters to read. So this 15% includes some usage from the backside meters in November that we have captured in December. We do show a lower distribution system loss this month at 6%, bringing our total system losses year-to-date to 21%. And if we take a look at the distribution system losses, which is really where we're focusing our efforts because that is the best chance at gaining improvements, you'll see it broken out, commercial lifts and residential, and you do see the reversal in December of the lift circuit losses. The last bar graph there is the year-to-date, and you can see that commercial is continuing to be our highest loss feeder. So what we are focusing on is checking and confirming that all of our commercial meters are accurate, and that is an ongoing project that will continue to be on our list.
But what's your explanation for why the losses, the actual losses, after you discount the backside, why the distribution system works better this month than last month?
I don't know that it is significantly better. It actually, if you look at the residential and commercial, it looks about the same or even a little worse on residential, probably due to higher usage on residential.
But because there's a different amount of electricity flowing, there's no way to really compare those month to month.
Right.
Okay.
So it's still something that we're looking into. I don't have a good explanation.
Okay, but the backside number doesn't explain the total difference, right?
As far as the distribution system losses,
Well, because it's 7,800 kilowatt hours.
that was just for Chair 2.
Oh, that's just church.
We didn't get Chair 3, 4, or the Sunrise Grill back there.
Oh,
We
I
didn't
see.
anticipate that there would be much usage, but we don't know what that number was.
Okay.
If there are no other questions,
Is
I'll
that
move
because
on to
you can't
propane.
get to the meters? Is that what you said?
We could not get to the meters during the meter read cycle time. It did open to the public later. We normally ride those lifts back there to read the meters.
Because those are manual read.
Yes, we do have installed a couple of the census meters back there, but we can't get them to read up and over the hill. If we look at propane, we had a very high production and usage month for December because of the cold weather. We show a usage, which is our propane that gets delivered to us, of 3.8 million cubic feet with a metered of 3.9. So that actually shows a bit more metered than used. We believe that is due to the timing of the deliveries. We had a delivery on the first and the last day of the month of December, and that always throws our accounting off a bit. So we show a negative 2% for the month, but bringing us to a 1% loss for propane for the year to date, which is about what we expect to see.
doing better than certain Southern California gas companies.
We are. If we take a look at water for the month, we also had a large month in water wastewater with a production of 1.6 million gallons and a metered of 1.55 million metered gallons. We have a 7% total system loss, but if you take into account our estimates for district facility use and backwards meters, etc., we're only at a 6% unidentified loss for the month. And that brings us to a 12% unidentified loss for the year. And lastly, if we take a look at wastewater, we metered on our plant influent meter 1.9 million gallons, and we metered on our revenue meters 1.55. We do have a total system unmetered for the year at 16%, with our goal of 30%, but we do expect that to increase in the warmer spring months. We have a collection systems maintenance plan that our wastewater superintendent has set up, and we hope that by following through with that, we'll be able to bring this number down.
How are flying saucers going?
That they are, we have some in.
Oh, wow.
We received 10 free of charge from the manufacturer because of the delays. But so far they are not in the field. They are here in the facility because of this. And if there are any other questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
If they had handles, we could rent them out.
Yeah.
They actually look pretty solid, pretty useful. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you very much. And that completes 8I, so we'll move on to the general manager's report.
Thank you. For our staffing levels right now are, we have our 18 stable, and we have 2 additional snow removal people, Nate Weber and Cedar Post, who's actually is his name, as temporary snow removal. We are looking for 1 to 2 more. So we have an interview today, and my thought is to try to staff up. Possibly we have 3 budgeted for. We might go to a 4th for a temporary snow shoveling because we're lacking on, some of the fire hydrants. We need to start digging out these fire hydrants. It's something that we haven't had to do for 4 years, but in a real Tahoe winter, digging out snow fire hydrants is a huge task, and needs to. We like to get it down into the 4-inch nozzle so that we can have instantaneous action. So we might hire up to 2 more people, and we are actively looking. The planning committee has begun a dialogue with our county supervisors, Terry Woodrow and Lynn Morgan, and yesterday we had a follow-up meeting with members of their staff as well. Unfortunately, Lynn Morgan was not able to come because of the icy roads. We're talking about mitigation measures and employee housing, and how we can assist the counties on being their eyes and ears in Kirkwood, and how they can assist us in revising a broken employee housing. And with that, I would welcome any comments from Eric or Cheryl that were at the meeting as far as your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it was a necessary meeting. So in that sense, it was good. I think that ideally we would have liked to have made a little bit more progress than we did in terms of reaction or positive reaction to some of our ideas. I think the path for the employee housing is fairly clear. That being that we are going to, we'll probably assemble the subcommittee again, but what we need to do is redefine what the demand for employee housing is, and then I'll just do a short outline of what an ordinance proposal would be, so that the county can pass it by their general counsel, determine what kind of environmental review or nexus study might be needed. We made clear that if there's a $20,000 or $30,000 study that's going to be needed, then we're not going to pursue this. But we also made clear that we don't want to change the specific plan. All we want to change is the mechanism by which the specific plan goals are reached. So hopefully that would avoid that kind of expensive study. I think on the mitigation compliance, it's in our court, again, to maybe write in a little bit more detail what we think the mechanisms would be that would trigger our ability to be involved with particularly projects that aren't big projects that go through a big permitting process through the counties, like the grindings that were out in the parking lots this past summer. I mean, the counties didn't even know about it, so there was no opportunity to go through mitigation measures and so on with the project people. So anyway, ball's in our court to develop a few documents to send off to the counties and talk to them further.
I mean, I thought it was a really useful meeting in that we were able to connect with, members of the planning department as opposed to Terry and Lynn, and just sort of reestablish those contacts and let those people know the issues that we're facing. And I thought they were very willing to work with us, and particularly Brian Peters, I thought proposed some really good next steps and that kind of stuff. So I thought it was a useful time spent, basically sort of a mini first step, but a good step nonetheless. So.
Yeah, I would call it sympathetic but non-committal.
We also discussed the district's role as an ex officio member of the TriTac, and what does that actually mean, and how we could assist TriTac in their administration and inspection needs. So I think that through that avenue, we might have a gateway of providing more assistance and getting things out to the community, which we do a really good job of, and they frankly don't.
And they were very receptive to the communication aspect.
Well, thank you both for volunteering your time to attend. Appreciate it.
Well, it will be ongoing, I'm sure, because both of these issues are really important to us.
I thank you in advance for future attendance.
Continuing on, the state is currently under a 25% water conservation mandate and is considering extending this beyond the February deadline. So they're seeking public input as we speak, but this could very well be extended into 2016. The district achieved a 45% reduction in water consumption as compared to 2013, so we did an extremely good job as far as the Kirkwood community. But this is something that's in the works. On the day before, a couple of days before the January 2nd weekend, we saw a tremendous 30-some dumpsters sitting down here in the lower 7 parking lot, and as we found that they were the dumpsters for South Tahoe Refuse. So Vail has switched vendors. They've gone from ACES, which has been providing service here in the district for 40-some years, to South Tahoe Refuse. So there are now 2 different refuse companies servicing Kirkwood. If you drive the 88 as much as I do, you'll see both trucks up and down the highway. So you'll remember back several years ago when Vail's first came in, I tried to consolidate solid waste and try to go into one contract, but that just didn't work out. So now we have 2 vendors. We are under a long-term contract with ACES, so when that expires, we'll definitely go out and see what opportunities we have. But we do have 2 vendors now. I thought this was interesting as far as snow removal goes. This is the 5-6 lot. You can see that they actually have an avalanche problem on some of their areas. And I certainly wouldn't want to park underneath that area. But we are completing snow removal. This is the RPM in action. It has been a real valuable tool, and we look forward to using our snow cat as well. So And with that, I open it up for any questions from the general manager.
Any questions? Audience questions? No? Okay.
And I'd like to defer on the operations report.
Okay.
Rick's not here today, so.
Okay. So we're ready to move to the standing committee reports, starting with finance or? any
We've
additional
covered,
things to
I think
add?
we covered everything. We've already covered everything.
Okay. And how about planning committee?
On planning, the only two things we didn't touch on, that we did touch on in the committee is, Michael will be working on updating our will serve capacity documents, so we understand better what capacity we've committed to projects, what we've committed and what might have expired, and so on. So that will be updated. The other thing we talked about was our customer satisfaction survey. You may remember we did this 3 years ago, I guess, in 2013. And we talked about re-administering that survey in May or June, so we'll have results by July 4th.
Okay. And operations, Jeff?
I think we covered almost everything in operations, but I would add that we do have a specific plan review, and we've been asked to submit our comments, director comments to Michael for a consolidated response. So we'll be doing that in the near future.
Okay, when you say we, the operations committee?
Well, not
Or-
the operations committee, all the.
Okay, so what is the due date? for-
Yeah, the planning committee also,
When
what
do you-
we'd like to do, well, the planning committee is going to, Jeff and I, Cheryl, and the other members are going to get our comments in prior to our next planning committee meeting, which is February, whatever.
It's by the end of the month.
By the end of the month,
This one.
not by
Okay.
the end of January.
Okay.
And I guess the other committees,
Well,
other board members and anybody
Anybody?
Right.
can do that, either obviously directly to the counties, or, but if we want to do a consolidated thing from the board and the committees, it would go through Michael.
Okay.
So by the end of the month would be great, because then we can review those and talk about it at our board meeting, and then the TriTac will consider it at their March meeting.
We'll make that an agenda topic if that sounds appropriate.
Yeah, I think that's good. Okay, on the personnel committee, we did review retirement plans and options on that and referred some things to finance. And then the other major topic is the general manager's contract. It's a 4-year contract at the end of 2016. So I began a dialogue with Michael on what his interest level and what it would look like to do a new contract. And my goal, before I didn't know that Standish wasn't in town, was to be able to, by the February board meeting, have a conceptual idea for the board to review that's already has some sense of, that would be something that might work. So I would like to still maintain that schedule, but that's dependent on me determining Standish's schedule, unless you know it when he's back or not. If not, I'll get in contact with him, but
Yeah, he's back on the 23rd.
the 23rd. Okay, I'm sure he'll want to work while on vacation, so, okay. So I think that's the major task. My objective would be to have, to work with this and have a very positive result early in this year. And with that, that completes the standing committee report. So item 12, general discussion. Are there any items not on the agenda?
I did have 2 questions on the consent for claims. I just want to pull it for these 2 questions, because that's just, I just wanted information. What was the payment for the bank, the First Bank of Omaha, or First Omaha Bank, or something?
Our credit card?
Oh, that's our credit card. Okay.
I don't know specifically.
Yeah, but okay, I just didn't recognize.
Yeah, we use that for purchases we don't have an account with a vendor. The conference calling is one of the major items.
Yeah, that's fine. And then the other question was the $10,000 or so paid to PCS. Is that an annual fee?
It's our annual maintenance and service.
Thanks.
Any audience questions? No? Okay, with that, then let's adjourn the meeting at 9:50. If anyone's doing record